This is a reading of The Unquiet Dead, A Psychologist Treats Spirit Possession by Dr. Edith Fiore, published in 1987. The 10 most common signs of possession. 1. Low energy level. 2. Character shifts or mood swings. 3. Inner voice or voices speaking to you. 4. Abuse of drugs, including alcohol. 5. Impulsive behavior. 6. Memory problems. 7. Poor concentration. 8. Sudden onset of anxiety or depression. 9. Sudden onset of physical problems with no obvious cause. 10. Emotional and/or physical reactions to reading The Unquiet Dead. This book is not meant to be a substitute for medical or psychological help. I always recommend that my patients see a qualified physician for their physical problems. If you have emotional or mental problems, you should seek the help of a professional therapist or counselor. I'm going to skip the foreword by Dr. Raymond A. Moody, Jr., a medical doctor. He's the author of Life After Death and the Light Beyond. Basically, he says that he isn't sure that he's convinced of the reality of possession, but he nonetheless endorses this book and this technique because he can vouch for it working. Preface. In The Unquiet Dead, I'm not attempting to prove that spirits exist nor that my patients were possessed. Rather, I will be showing you what goes on daily in my office and introducing a therapy that, although not a panacea, is effective and embodies ancient concepts within the context of 20th century hypnotherapy. My patients and I use the working hypothesis that personality does survive the death of the body. Through the years, many people have reported to me that they have experienced the spirits of their loved ones, sometimes immediately following their deaths. Often it was just a knowing that they were there. At other times, they were seen or heard, or an identifying odor was noticed, their perfume or favorite pipe tobacco, etc. These spirits were not earthbound, but came to say goodbye, or were visitors from the spirit world, there to give comfort or help. The entities that had not made successful transitions into the afterlife were the ones that caused problems by affecting people in harmful and destructive ways through possession. Helping these possessing spirits to leave resulted in eliminating their devastating effects, often dramatically changing lives. Because depossession works, I felt a need to write this book. What you will be reading may disturb you, but I hope it will help you by explaining what you have been experiencing in yourself or with others. It will offer hope that problems that up to now have seemed insoluble can be resolved, and that techniques for achieving this goal can be found. At the very least, you may gain a new perspective for understanding human behavior. What will be revealed also invites you to open your mind to the possibility that life does continue after death, and this belief itself can have a profound and far-reaching effect on you. I'm sharing my therapeutic techniques for both professionals and therapists who would like to include them in their armamentarium. In a sense, certain chapters could be viewed as a training manual for professional healers. The case material that has been used in The Unquiet Dead is of such a personal and sensitive nature that it was important and necessary to protect my patients' privacy. For this reason, I've obscured only their identities while retaining the essential qualities that they presented. Many of the verbatim transcripts that illustrate the case studies, as well as some of the chapters of this book, were repetitious and rambling. Therefore, I have edited them in the interest of clarity and succinctness. Most of the cases you'll be reading about were straightforward and uncomplicated in their solutions, but one involved connections between two principles, the patient and the spirit, that went back into a past lifetime. However, you do not need to believe in reincarnation to benefit from the findings or the techniques I shall be describing. Now let us examine the role of spirit possession in human lives. Chapter 1 will introduce you to this fascinating and surprising subject. Chapter 1. An Introduction to Possession. The nurse said DOA. I was above my body in the emergency room looking down. It was too gory. I didn't want it to be saved. A bad accident. I heard this terrified scream for help. I thought, maybe I can help somebody. They can't help me here. I went to help. There was a young boy being operated on. It was the spirit screaming, not the body. The body was on a table, but 6 feet above that was the boy, but he was like me. He was panicky, so I talked to him as a friend, and I asked him to talk to me. He finally calmed down, and we've been friends ever since. That encounter took place 46 years ago. Albert had been with my patient, Howard, every day since, within his body as a possessing spirit. Albert came out of hiding after 3 years of hypnoanalytic therapy. As he put it, I ain't going to talk to you, I don't need your help. He surfaced because, on a hunch, I regressed Howard to his tonsillectomy at 4 to see whether he had picked up an earthbound entity. Certain clues had pointed in that direction. I was interrupted rudely during my hypnotic induction by an angry, unfamiliar, guttural voice issuing from Howard. "He don't need your help." With that pronouncement, I began an intensive therapy with the spirit, who later identified himself as Albert. After 3 sessions, he appeared to leave reluctantly with 2 cronies from the spirit world. 2 weeks later, Howard bounded into my office with a huge grin on his face. Before he sat in the reclining chair, he excitedly reported, "I have no desire to eat. For the first time in my life, I'm totally uninterested in food. Believe it or not, I had a hard time actually finding something that appealed to me. And I didn't even finish it. All this is a new experience. And in the first 4 days, I lost 7 pounds." Relaxing back a bit in his chair, he continued, "I really feel encouraged that I will get rid of these last 90 pounds, and once and for all, end my battle of the bulge." Brenda, a tall, stunning black woman in her late 20s, was seeking relief from pains over most of her body that had defied medical specialists for years. Under hypnosis, and regressed to the cause of her pains, she relived her anguish upon learning that Anne, her closest friend's youngest daughter, had been mangled badly in a near-fatal car crash. She spoke with reverence of her deep love and attachment to Anne. Then she reported going into Anne's hospital room, where she was being kept alive on a respirator. "I want to go in by myself. I walk in, I look at her. It doesn't look like Anne, doesn't look like her at all, so bruised and crushed. Her head is so large, but she is so tiny, so little. The nurse says we can't do anything for her. I just look at her. I wish I could do something. Crying. She's so pretty. She was so pretty, so cute. Something has to be done for her. I don't know what to do. I just look at her. I pray. I'm so upset. Maybe I can take her to, I could keep her alive. I can do something for her. I'm in charge, and I'll take care of everything. I'll be the first to see her body. I'll shop and dress her up real pretty. I'll arrange the funeral and get everything for her, the coffin, the flowers, make her look pretty again." Long pause. "She's with me now. She's with me, and I like it." Brenda's body had been twisting and contorting during the regression. I advanced her to the present and, while she was still deeply hypnotized, explained, "Anne needs to be released, Brenda. Her spiritual progress and happiness depend on her going into the spirit world. She's a prisoner here. I'm sure you don't want that for her. Let her go now." "It will be hard, but I'll do it," she acquiesced, wiping tears from her cheeks. She then said goodbye to Anne. Within minutes, the depossession was completed. Howard and Brenda are 2 of the more than 500 possessed patients I've treated during the past 7 years. They came to my office suffering the gamut of psychological and psychosomatic symptoms and problems. Since I became aware of this phenomenon, I found that at least 70% of my patients were possessed, and it was this condition that caused their dis-ease, with a hyphen. Most of these people were relieved through depossession techniques of more than one entity. Occasional patients were unwitting hosts to as many as 50 or more. Possession is a relative condition. When it is complete, which is rare, the original personality seems to be gone and is replaced by that of the earthbound entity. Usually there is a vacillating balance between the two. At times, the spirit exerts only slight influence, while at others, he or she can be extremely dominant. In some cases, there is an ongoing inner battle for control, replete with mental dialogues, even insults and commands. The spirits that possessed my patients were once people from all walks of life, who, after death, remained in the physical world and became displaced persons. They had not made the proper transition between the earth plane and the other side at death. Sometimes years later, without bodies of their own, they merged accidentally or intentionally with people whose lives thereafter were never the same. For these spirits, there was no worse fate than sentencing themselves to residing in other individuals' bodies, for they thereby postponed their chances to enter the spirit world where they belonged. Another class of spirits, historically called demons or devils, are believed never to have been human beings. There are documented cases of their devastating and, in some cases, fatal effects. The Catholic Church has taken this form of possession very seriously and uses especially experienced priests who, after extensive investigations and preparations, perform a highly structured exorcism, the Roman ritual. Many exorcists have suffered great injuries physically, mentally, and emotionally, or even lost their lives as a result of these encounters. Fortunately, to my knowledge, I have never treated a patient who was plagued by demons. Demonic or satanic possession is not within the scope of this book. For those who may wish to pursue the subject, there are relevant references in the bibliography. As a note, I'm not going to read the bibliography, but it is available on archive.org. Drawing upon my case files, I shall show you how people become vulnerable to entities and what happens when spirits entwine with their personalities. You may wonder how I, as a clinical psychologist, became involved in this unorthodox psychotherapy. Chapter 2 will describe my background and how my therapy evolved, changing my view of life.